I know we're sort of getting to our last couple of minutes. I don't know if this is an unfair question to ask you, so feel free to say you're unable to answer it right now. But if that is, um, a kind of negative version of, theorists and academics in relation to social movements and politics, how would you conceptualize, a role of theorists and academics who want to help out, the social movements and ideally the working class movements? Do you have any thoughts on that? We have a lot of folks who are sort of, trudging through their PhDs and their grad school years right now. So can you give them any hope?
No, no, so I'm just kidding. I'm working on this, to be honest. And I'll just try to explain with the little time we have left why I think it's complicated. And then maybe this is just food for thought for others, because I continue to think that theory is important. It's important for a number of reasons, so that you can develop a social theory of the world that you live in, so that you understand what you need to do to try to change it. That's the simplest way to talk about it. But you also need to be able to articulate a vision that's compelling to others. And so, this is why the field of, more like philosophy, not just theory, but, just what does justice look like? What kind of world do we want to live in? What does it mean to live in a free society? These are the kinds of questions that you need to ask in order to give a compelling vision of the future. And so it's important for these reasons to be able to navigate the political and cultural and ideological terrain, and to be able to have some consistency and focus, and to know what you want to achieve. And I think that theory plays an important role in that. I think philosophy at its best plays an important role in that. But at the same time, I think that people use theory in really different ways. And I think it's worth being super ambivalent about that, because, I'm an academic. I often get very frustrated with myself and my discipline and the universities and so on, because people think they're activists in this world. They think that there's this way in which they know there's the movements happening outside, but they're doing this work of social justice in the university, and it can become very narcissistic, very alienating, and very confusing. And I think this comes again from the New Left. When the New Left entered the academy, they did have experience in social movements, and they did think about themselves that way, and they bequeathed that to new generations of people. But as we know, there's a huge education gap in the United States. There's a huge gap between, people with 4 years degrees and the kind of and people who don't have those and work other kinds of jobs. There's a huge cultural problem here. So I don't want to overstate what theory can do to change the world from that perspective. But there's another perspective, which is the perspective that people had some, previous generation ago, which is that they thought, Catherine McKinnon says this all the time. She's kind of a radical feminist, not a Marxist, but she talks about, feminism had a way of theorizing collectively to attain knowledge, to be able to figure out how to know a thing in order to do what they needed to do. And there was a kind of there was a collective endeavor to figure out what reality was like, and to be able to create a kind of epistemological narrative or theory to be able to give themselves the tools to clarify that and to continue to build. And I think at its best, when people are not being so academic about it, I think that's what it is for people. And I hope that from my side of things, people can become attain some humility, and I hope that people also aren't intimidated by the philosophy and the theory, because at the end of the day, I think what we're doing is we're talking about justice, we're talking about needs, we're talking about values, we're talking about the good life, and I think everyone can be a part of that. And if we need and if we want a better world, people have to feel empowered. And you start doing that by having an imagination, by being like, this is the world I want to see. And that's intrinsically theoretical, and it motivates people. And it can be beautiful if it's not so driven by professors. So
Oh no, I mean, I hear you completely. I'm a first generation went to school, and I was one of the only people from my neighborhood and community that went off to school. And I remember, working class community, and I remember going back, and one, I remember really first being exposed to Marxism proper, and all of these lights going off in my head that like all of these kind of family struggles and community struggles that we'd experienced and sort of that you sort of put them in isolation, that they're actually very much connected. And that being an incredible moment of one, okay, I realized what the enemy is, but that was extremely powerful too. And then going back and being able to share that with friends and community members, of all different political persuasions beforehand, and really seeing those lights go off and realize, okay, all of this other stuff really doesn't seem to be as unifying as it was before. What really matters is that we're part of this kind of social class, this economic class, and we need to find a way to, fight for ourselves and get out of it. I'm very like adamant about this because this kind of fight is always going on the left. It's like, should we do theories? And, there's this kind of like straw man argument that people say like, oh, we shouldn't tell anyone they have to read books to come to political meetings. Like, well, no one's fucking doing that. I've never heard that unless like by somebody who's just a psychopath, right? Like I've never heard that kind of argument in any like real sense. I understand what some people are allergic to, but these are our tools. They're tools that can help us get free. And also don't put yourself in a position where somebody else is doing all the thinking for you. That's why any good socialist party, Marxist organization, the first thing that they did was do political education, not just, as a kind of trial process, but actually so that everybody was equipped to understand what they were doing, why they were doing it, and also to prevent it being a situation where one person is just able to lord over everyone else saying, I've read the holy text and I get it, and you don't.
can I say one last thing about
Yeah.
this? That the feeling that you're describing about the light that went off in your head and the feeling of like, I get this now, I can do something about this. I think that when you talk about a theory that actually reflects reality, and there's a feeling of joy and like an affect of like, I understand myself better now, and I understand myself better in relation to other people. And it makes, I know the word empowerment is kind of cheesy these days, but I think it makes people feel it's empowering. And I think that if you look at the major political organizations throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, not just in like the trade union movement, but also all of the like civil rights organizations, Black Power organizations, they all had their discrete and independent reading lists, and they fought about what reading list they should have. And so did the feminist movement. So there's a way in which, here's how you know the difference in a certain sense between a good theory and a bad theory, and it's whether or not it makes people feel empowered. And I'll tell you one thing, when people read stuff like Hegemony and Socialist Strategy and a lot of this post-structuralist stuff in their activist groups or in their meetings, the way you know that this isn't a good theory and that it doesn't work is that it does not make people feel empowered. It makes people feel anxious, paranoid, unable to find direction, like defensive and like worried about each other, about connecting with other people. This is not what, like, that's the opposite of what theory is for. And it serves academics well. It serves, people, the opinion making class very well. But if it served working people well, we would know by now, and it hasn't. So,
Yeah. No, I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. For people who are interested in even more conversations on hegemony and social strategy and a lot of other interesting texts and thinkers and theories, definitely check out What's Left of Philosophy podcast. I listen to it all the time, and definitely we'll put links and stuff for people to be able to follow you, Lillian. Definitely check her out. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks for having me.